All right, let's get started. So first up, welcome everybody to our October webinar, and our topic is the college applications process timeline. Now, even if you've seen me present at a library, just note that I've had to cut down that presentation simply because of the time constraints that we would have at the library, but this one is pretty much going to be as detailed as I can get to help you orient yourself. The idea is not to overwhelm you because since you're a part of my newsletter, you know that every month I do break this down for you and remind you what's coming up and what needs to get done this month. So it's simply here's the big picture, and then we can chop it down every month as to what your priorities are. So with that said, let's dive right in. All right, this is my contact info or just even social media information for anybody who wants this info in bite-sized pieces. And all recordings for this will go on the Coffee and College YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. And I usually timestamp everything. So even if we do talk for an hour, I don't actually make you watch the whole hour, or I segment it out for you so you can just jump to the topic that you find relevant. What do we want to cover today? First up, what do colleges care about? Then planning out the 9th through 12th grade, including some of the vital time periods, the sensitive time periods that we need to be aware of. Then a couple of common pitfalls that cost families time and money. The realistic path to a stress-free applications process. I know we said that with the 10th grader or the parent of a 10th grader on the call that it feels early, but one of the tips and tricks is to start early, because better to start early and be organized and only have to do things once every 3 months or such, but still be moving forward, as opposed to trying to rush everything, particularly in second half of junior year. All right. And then of course, how to stay organized through all of it. So if at any point, as I mentioned before, you have questions, just post them in the chat. I am going to have the chat running to the side of my screen so that I can address your questions as we go, or I'll just find a good stopping point. All right, let's get into this. So first of all, what is it that makes this college applications process feel so overwhelming? The first one, record low acceptance rates. Now, competitive universities in particular are getting more and more. We're talking anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000 plus applications for about 3,000 to 5,000 seats. So a lot of competition out there, and it becomes scary. It becomes scary when you're looking to apply into one of those top tier universities, because you're playing a very risky game. We don't know if you're going to get accepted or not. And how do we then buffer it, make sure that we're also covering our bases and are safe? So that's what makes it scary. Then, of course, the test optional policies are varied per university. And one thing, and I'll mention this more towards the end, but since we're on it, I'll say it, which is that earlier this month, the government sent out a memo to top 20% universities asking for the SAT and ACTs to be reinstated. So for anyone who's not currently the parent of a senior on this call, you should plan to take the SATs or ACTs. Okay. And we'll do a whole separate presentation on SAT versus ACTs, just so you have an understanding of the differences between those two exams, what they measure, what their structures are, how do universities take a look at them, what do they ask for, and all the vocabs and everything associated with it. So that's a whole hour-long presentation of its own, and I'll make sure I give you the practice tests and resources that go with it. But for now, just be aware that you should factor in SAT or ACT prep time into this entire college applications timeline process that you have going on for your teenager. I think everyone has noticed at this point that the cost of college is at some point just ridiculous, insanely ridiculous. So that's also something that is daunting. It's freaky to know that it's going to cost thousands and thousands to send a teenager to university, particularly when the teenager may not be aware of what it is that they want to study. And they could end up changing their minds later down the line, or they might end up with a degree that they may not be using in the first place. So it does get a little bit overwhelming and terrifying when we think about the rising cost of college. And then, of course, AI is great and the internet is great, but sometimes there is such a thing as just an overload of information, whether that's from online, whether that's from friends and family that we're hearing from, whether that it's just, everyone's well-meaning, but we will hear conflicting information as we go through this process. And therefore, it's up to us to filter out what's good for our teen, for that, our specific teen, and what doesn't work for our specific teen, even though it works for their sibling, right? Even in the same household, something that works for one teenager may not work for another one, and vice versa. So it is important to filter through a lot of that and say, okay, here's the truth, here's not truth. Now, even within what's true, here's what applies to teen and the teen one, and here's what applies to teen two. Some things overlap and some things are just completely different because they are different individuals with different strengths and weaknesses. And finally, it's everyone trying to do everything. So working with the seniors right now on their college applications, one of the things that comes up is, have I done enough? Sometimes it's, I wish I had started earlier so I had done more. And a lot of times it's just, here's everything I've done, but I don't have depth in most of this, if not all of it. I've just done a lot of surface level things. So that we need a little bit of clarity on, okay? And for this particular topic of doing all the things, I am going to refer you, and I'll make sure I send this in our email link when I post the recording of this talk, but it's the talk about extracurriculars. We have an hour-long, just in-depth dive, and I use examples of students and how they took their couple extracurriculars and elevated them to something that shows interest, that shows their unique ability to get things done, to step up, and take initiative. Okay, so I'll make sure I link to that, but that is also a good sort of build up to it, but not all at once, maybe wait 2 weeks before you watch it, just so it's not information overload. Otherwise, we'll end up doing the one thing we were trying not to do, which is just load you up with information and hope for the best. So you've probably seen this before, and let's go over this one more time because this needs to be reiterated. It needs to be reminded of. What do colleges care about? Well, first up, they care about your GPA. A university basically decides how you're going to be as a potential student, if you're going to do well, if you're going to drop out, if you're going to struggle, if you're going to thrive in that atmosphere by taking a look at your previous record of your performance. If you're the type of student who's willing to ask for help, chances are you may have a higher grade point average as opposed to the student who's not willing to, who's basically trying to coast. Okay, so your grades matter. They matter a lot, regardless of the type of university you're trying to go to. Whether it's top tier university or it's a state university, it doesn't matter. Okay, your grades matter. And to give you an idea for the weighted versus unweighted, the weighted GPA factors in the difficulty level of a course. So getting a B in an AP calculus class is a little bit more, harder. It's harder than getting a B in an honors or an honors calculus class, which is harder than getting a B in a standard calculus class. So the weighted GPA factors in the difficulty level of the course. The unweighted GPA does not care. A B is a B, it's a B. So the unweighted GPA is 4.0. And this is usually the one we hear about, the 4.0 one, unless your high school uses a system of a scale of 100, and that's also common, and that's okay. Your high school can also use a different scale instead of, there's the unweighted GPA, which is out of 4.0, and sometimes that's all the high school will give you is the unweighted GPA. Sometimes all your high school will give you is the weighted GPA, and that could be out of 5.0, although by state, by district, that tends to vary a little bit, okay? Ultimately, what will happen is that the university will take your transcripts, and if needed, will recalculate your GPA based on the grades that you have so that they have one standard measure for everybody across the country. Because as a country, we have no one system to measure grades, to note the grades. We have varieties of systems, and uniformity is not something that exists. So universities have to take care of that issue, and they'll take your transcripts, pull the classes that they want. A lot of times that means the electives are cut out, especially if the electives are the fun classes like pottery or jewelry design or art or something. They'll cut those out. They'll take the standard history, math, science, English, foreign language, and they'll factor in the grades for those. Okay, so that's just the grades component. And of course, as I said, the grades in your higher level classes. So APs, honors, international baccalaureate program, if your area offers that, but also dual enrollment. Now, if you're in Connecticut, we have something called the ECE program, which is early college experience, and that's partnering with UConn. If you're not in Connecticut, even then, there's something that's called the dual enrollment program. Now, every county calls it something different, but ultimately, the umbrella title for that is just dual enrollment. That means you are taking college classes while you're still in high school. That may mean the college classes at the high school itself, and it's just that math class, and you paid the $100 or however much fee, and now if you get a B or C or a higher, you're getting college credit for that class. But it could also be that you are physically going to the community college or the state college in the evenings and just taking the classes there. Well, one class there or two classes, how many you pick. So dual enrollment works in different ways. Once again, talk to your guidance counselor if you are interested in dual enrollment. Okay. Then class rank. I think more and more we're finding that high schools are letting go of this concept of class rank because, I mean, for various reasons. One, I think it causes a lot of conflict in that grade, but it may also just not be an accurate portrayal of the students' ability to succeed. So no matter the reason that universities are letting go of this idea of class rank, just be aware that it is not your problem. You can leave that section blank on the application. Okay. If it's something that the high school decides and it has nothing to do with you and you have no control over it and you couldn't have done anything about it, that's okay. Then it is not a you problem. It is the high school's problem. And it is the high school's job to notify the university that, hey, by the way, we don't do class rank. Okay. So that's the high school's job, and the high schools do that. Right. And so that covers the coursework category. Then we have the SAT, ACTs. So as I mentioned, that these are becoming more and more, they're gaining more and more traction again. Make sure the simple way, short and sweet, prep, plan your prep, especially if you're in 10th grade, plan your prep. We're going to look at the timeline and I'll show you when you can plan your prep. If you're in 11th grade, plan your prep. If you're a senior, I imagine you're at this point already done. Okay. But make sure you're planning the prep. Then there's the personal, I'm going to put that up right now. But then there's a personal component, and the personal component is all the things you do outside the classroom, the extracurricular activities. That includes the jobs, the volunteering, the hobbies that you do, the family responsibilities that you might have, the sports you play, whether that's team, your school team or your club team. But ultimately, what did you do outside the classroom? That counts as an extracurricular activity. Then honors and achievements are the academic honors and achievements. And I was showing a few parents this before we got on this call. I had another webinar at a library about navigating the Common App. But the one thing to note, and the one little fine print that most students don't read before they start typing, is the bit on the app that says, on the application that says, list an order of priorities to you. Okay. A lot of students will just list things down chronologically, but that's not what the application is asking you for. They're asking you what's important to you, which means where do you spend a lot of your time? So make sure you're reading that part for the activities. After that, we have your academic honors and achievements, the honor roll, the honor societies you might be a part of, any kind of in-school project that exists. So whether that is, let's say, a writing portfolio. So one of the local high schools has a writing portfolio. Juniors have, it's called the junior writing portfolio. So juniors take out 6 pieces of writing on different styles. There's a criteria rubric for it, but different types of styles. They can use writing that they've done for classes previously and update that, put that in, that's okay. Or they can write something completely from scratch. Either option is great. But then that is submitted to their teachers. And usually I believe in the fall semester, and then in the spring semester, the teachers get back to them with the grade or their score. And that writing portfolio is out of 6. So there used to be a time when, for that particular high school, no one would get a 6. Out of the 150 students submitting this, not one student would get a 6, and maybe 3 might get a 5.5. Okay. Well, at that point, getting that 5.5 is an achievement. Getting that 5 is an achievement. Even though it's connected to your school, it will be acknowledged. Okay, and I'll show you that in just a second of how universities would even know that something like this exists and the scope of that project. But moving to the next part is your college and your supplemental essays. Now, your college essay is just your way of saying hi. It's your opportunity to say hi to the admissions officers. And most students tend to BS this. They wait too long, even though it's taken them for all of these other components, it's taken you 3 years at minimum to pull your grades together to do, and 3 hours, let's say, to do your SAT, ACT, but months to prep. It's taken you years to do your extracurricular activities and pull those together. Same with your honors and achievements. And yet most students barely spend a good 3 to 6 weeks putting their applications together. Okay, a lot of students will spend a month, and around this time, I'll have students, we spend about 2 weeks getting everything together and we spend hours putting everything together. But you don't want to put yourself in that bucket. Make sure that you're starting, if possible, over the summer, right? If you took you 3 years to pull all of the coursework, extracurriculars, everything together, give yourself at least 3 months to pull your essays, writing pieces together. Now, the other part's the supplemental essay. And these are sort of the hidden, I don't even know. They're the hidden jerk faces, because some universities have none, some have 1 or 2. And quite a few times what will happen is when I'm working with my students, what we do is in August, we'll go to the Common App because it opens on August 1st, and we'll just create a master Google Doc with all of the supplementals listed, just a chart so we know how much writing needs to get done. And then some universities will, in September, add on a supplemental. So we found out that happened with Elon this year because they added on one a little bit later. So we thought we were done. We were copying and pasting it into his application. And then we get to that section. We can't even submit because then we get to a section to post the other supplementals. We realize, oh shoot, there's one more that wasn't there before when we were copying and pasting. So now we have one more to write, but that tends to happen as well. So keep in mind, yes, we all think college essays when we think of the applications, but their supplementals are also equally important. They deserve just as much attention, just as much research, just as much commitment when you're writing them. And don't be surprised if one randomly pops up around September, because the universities are still pulling their applications together and they're updating. And most students have not done their writing by then. So for the ones who did start, sometimes that can hit you. But you've done your other work, so this isn't that big of a deal to write. Okay, you still have the time. You're still early in your schedule, so it works out. And finally, the counselor and teacher recommendations. So for all juniors, you want to add, your counselor is going to write you a recommendation. That's a given. But you want to ask at least 2 teachers and 1 other person. So 2 teachers, ideally from a core subject, or especially from a subject you want to go study, and then 1 other person. That other person can be a coach, could be a community service director, could be a clergy person, could be a job supervisor. In some cases, with some universities, could even be a peer or a family member. Okay, I've seen peer more than I've seen family member, but the peer is so that the admissions officers can gauge as to whether or not you're going to fit in with the other students that they have currently there. So if you're going to fit in with the vibe of what's happening at the university right now. So they want to know, hey, what does somebody your age think about you? So keep that in mind. Then there's interviews, and interviews in senior year particularly. If you get your applications in early, you can sign yourself up for the optional interviews. Again, nothing is actually optional in a college applications process. The admissions officers are not chilling there thinking, man, how boring is life? Oh, I know what we can do. Let's add on a few more essays for us to read. So universities are not doing that. Meaning anything that's optional, whether that's uploading your resume or creating a resume and uploading it, whether that's writing an extra supplemental because it's considered optional, so you can choose if you want to, but you don't have to. And of course, most students are not going to. Or if it's doing an optional interview, just make sure that you're signing yourself up for all of these opportunities. Now, with the interviews, it can work in, technically there's little subsections, but let's say 1 of 3 ways. 1, there's just no interview at all. Don't have to worry about it. It's not part of the process. You're good to go if you've just submitted your application. 2 is if there's an optional interview. So some universities will have options available for students, particularly for students who are not great writers and they want a way to communicate. So optional interviews. Now, with the optional interviews, those could be in person at the university, or they could be online, and they could be with an alumni member, or they could be with an admissions rep. Okay, so multiple options. If you want to do an interview, the university will help you make sure it gets done. Then the third option is that the university will only interview those that are moving up in their applications processing. So not everyone gets interviewed, only the people that they're now narrowing down, right? As they're filtering and they say, okay, well, we need more data, we need more content, we want to know if they're going to fit in with the vibe, what are their values? Then they'll go ahead and just mandate the interview. So it's not optional, it's something that the university will reach out to you, and you have to now go ahead and pick a date and time that work for you and schedule. All right, so that's the interviews. Now there's some fine print in there in terms of if it's optional. Some universities let you interview even before you ever send in the application, and some say you have to send in the application. Some universities tend to interview all applicants because they have enough alumni members that can help with this process. And some just say, nope, it's only if you're moving up the tier. And some will say, okay, you're moving up, like you're really, really close. We're, 50-50 on you. And now we're going to interview you. So it really just, that's an internal process from the university, and we have no control or influence over that. All right. And the final thing, demonstrated interest. So particularly if you're trying to apply to a competitive university, you want to make sure you are demonstrating interest. Now, a couple of ways you can demonstrate interest. Number 1, follow the university on social media. Number 2, make sure you are opening the emails that the university send out to you. A lot of universities, well, particularly again, the small or the private universities, may be tracking that data. Okay. 3, if you are again interested in that university and the university is sending you emails, click on some of the links embedded in the emails. Okay, so those are a few ways. And then one more, just a last one, is attend virtual or in-person marketing sessions or information sessions. So some university, most universities, I think at this point will have some sort of a virtual admission seminar available. Make sure you attend that. Some of the universities will be coming to your high school to talk to you about the experience that they offer, the academics that they offer, their traditions, and so on. So make sure that you are staying on top of that. All right, do we have a question? I think I heard somebody. No? Okay. All right. Once again, just a heads up, if you do have any questions, please post them in the chat. I do have the chat running, so I'll catch your question as it comes. Any questions on this, what the colleges care about part? All right. So one thing to note, while I have this evenly divided, the universities have different divisions of coursework versus what percentage of your applications, your SAT score versus your personal, and all of it. But the secret thing to all of this, the subtle thing to all of this, is the timing. Which deadlines are you applying for? Are you waiting for the last option? Even if you're waiting for the regular, how far in advance did you submit your application? How on top of things are you? When did you do your college tours? What did you learn from? Just every bit that you can pull together, and that's all based on timing. Okay, whether it's college tours, whether it's information sessions, whether it's reaching out to the admissions officers, all of that, it's all laying the breadcrumbs to the ultimate application the application itself. Okay. All right, everyone's still with me. I'm going to pretend everybody responded in this chat and said yes. So it may also just be dinner time, so you might be listening while you're figuring dinner out. But with that said, what's happening? What should you be working on? And what are your priorities? So we're going to talk about the freshmen and sophomores first, because you have the grades and extracurriculars. And then we're going to spend quite a bit of time on the juniors and seniors. So freshmen and sophomores, your current priorities are your grades and your extracurricular activities. No other option. Okay. Your grades have to stay up. And one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen from freshman year is that students mess up in their first semester, and then it takes them 3 years to now build up their GPA. Don't be in that boat, because then it's sad. It's sad when I meet the students who we have to eliminate options from universities, programs that they like, but they're interested in, but we have to eliminate it because their GPA is too low for something that happened all the way in freshman year. Okay, or something that happened all the way in sophomore year, and now they've spent 2 years or a year and a half making up for it, but it just wasn't enough. And that sucks. So make sure the grades stay on point. If that means watching videos on YouTube or Khan Academy or going to extra help hours with your teacher, then go for it. If that means that maybe external help is required, then that may be something to look into. All right, so that's part one. Then the extracurriculars. As I mentioned, extracurriculars could be anything that you do outside the classroom. With that said, freshman year, feel free to explore. Feel free to explore the beach cleanups, the Thanksgiving, October. We don't have many drives in October, but let's say November, Thanksgiving, there's always a food pantry drive or a food drive. And then you can volunteer at a food pantry or homeless shelter with a parent. You can, in December, pack, have a toy drive or participate in the toy drive. Help pack presents sometimes. And we used to do this back in high school, is that every December, particularly it's the week before we're out for our holidays, or it's 2 weeks prior. And we're all in the library during one of our classes, just packing school supplies and gift wrapping school supplies. So then that would be given away. So our school ran a Christmas present drive. And then we also had simultaneously a school supply drive. So the kids would get the presents, and then every family would get one set of school supplies. So we would be in there packing, right? And that was just part of our school. But I know that particularly in our small towns, and even there's just local organizations like the Rotary clubs or ski clubs or whatever else that run their own drives. Okay, so that may be something to look into. Now, a question came in, which is, well, how are volunteer opportunities verified? You would just have to contact the organization that's hosting it. So if you see that XYZ organization's hosting it, just check the validity of that organization. Particularly in small towns, it's easy to tell. But if you're going for if you're in a larger city and you want to know if that a charity is in fact legitimate, then make sure you run it through the online searches, check out their website, call them up to see what's going on, see how much information they can offer you. The more they can offer you, chances are the more legitimate they might be, especially if you ask them what's happening year round. Okay. So that was a question in the chat. Now, extracurriculars. So I mentioned all the opportunities. Now, the other thing is that's freshman year where you're just trying and throwing everything in there to see what you like. That might be the clubs that your friends are joining, but you don't really care about, but you're finding out now after you've joined, or now you need to pivot, or it might be the sports you're trying. It might be the community service. It might be whatever opportunity. In sophomore year, particularly next semester, sophomore year, so spring semester, you really want to pick the one or two activities you want to go deeply into. And once again, this is an hour talk of its own, and I have that video on the Coffee in College YouTube channel. Be sure to check it out. Just jump to the sections that you want to. It's all time-stamped in the description. But ultimately, what I want to say here is find the one or two. You don't have to do it for every activity, but the one or two activities where you're going to show longevity, where you're going to go show depth. So where you took initiative, where you got other people involved, where you went out of your comfort zone to create something, to start something, to continue something, to play around with an idea that you might have had, whether that's a creative project, whether that's a service-oriented project, whether that's a sport, and you did something in that. And then demonstrated impact. So longevity, depth, demonstrated impact. How many others were involved with you? How many did you all end up impacting? Okay, so those are the three categories that universities look for when they're thinking extracurricular activities. The ultimate idea is knowing that they're not getting a person who's passively coasting, just watching as things go by. They're willing to step in when they do see an opportunity to serve, to participate, to create, whatever that might be that you're stepping in. Okay. And then college tours. So college tours can start, the earlier you start, the better for your sanity. That's the simple way of putting it. The earlier you start, the better for your sanity as a parent and the better for your teen sanity. Because when we start in junior year, there's too much pressure. The juniors are now thinking, oh, shoot, my life is about to change. Everything starts to feel real. Starts to feel like my life that I'm about to leave home. I need to know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And they will not believe you if you tell them that they're allowed to change. They're not going to believe you. They're just psyching themselves out. So if you start earlier, it almost becomes a fun routine that you guys do. You can make it fun, make it just create your not customs. I forgot just your own traditions and your own rituals to go with the college tour experience, right? Maybe it's get in the car for a weekend and we're going to drive and do a road trip. And then 3 to 6 months later, we'll do that again, but in this other direction. So make it into a fun experience, a memorable experience, because it's important to note, that these are the last few years that your teen may be spending at home. So it can either be filled with friction or it can be filled with fun. So college tours, ideally, which also means if you have a freshman or you have a sophomore, you're going on vacation somewhere, especially as the holidays come up and there's a university nearby, at minimum, just drive through it. Drive through it. Let your teenagers see what a large college campus can look like or what a small college campus can look like, because they know that they have time to figure this out. So now they're going to pay a little more attention to the vibe that they're interested in. Okay. Then as we go into second semester sophomore year, that's when you want to start taking a little more seriously. Start coming up with your college list. And then maybe over the summer, you do a few tours. So there's less at stake. There's still about 2 years. There's 2 years left before any of this really happens. Transition point comes along, but your teenager is now seeing the options and helping narrow down their list. So see if you can start in sophomore year and definitely in junior year. If you're interested in doing college tours in the first place, then that's also a good time to start. When you're doing college tours, make sure you're hanging out. Okay, and because we are in junior year, let's actually hop over to the junior year. But as you're doing your college search and college tours and coming up with your list, make sure you're hanging out. College tours are ultimately a curated experience. They have been thought through and tailored to seem appealing, to be very appealing to the audience. Okay, so you're always going to hear the good stuff. You're always going to hear the traditions and the statues that every university has that has a meaning to it. You're going to find out about all of that. Hang around campus afterwards. Hang around and say, okay, great. What does the food taste like? Can we just sit around in this public space in the cafes and watch the people? Just people watch. There we go. That's the term. And just people watch. See what's happening. When are they active? Are people hanging around campus, or are they just in class here for a few hours and then just going home? Okay, is this the fun area? Or I'll give you an example. Every university has some sort of a student green, like a student lawn area. In some universities, students are having picnics there. They're just sitting around, they're sleeping using their backpack as a pillow and just hanging around. In some universities, there's like Shakespeare in the Park at that time or in the evenings. We also, when I was at the University of Florida, there would be students who just tied a rope like a foot off the ground, nothing crazy, but they would tie a rope up between two trees and then try to teach themselves how to walk the rope. There would be the Hare Rama, Hare Krishna folks who would come in and they would have a lunch set up, and it would be like a $5 for all you can eat type of thing. So there's different campuses have different stuff going on, different activities. Just because a campus might be big, just because a campus might have this open space, that doesn't mean that the atmosphere is there for certain activities, right? Or that certain activities happen. So just be aware of what's happening in your college tour. And also don't be afraid to deviate from your college tour. After it's over, go say hi to the admissions department and ask them whatever questions you might have. Hey, I'm from XYZ state. Who is my admissions rep? Can I meet with my admissions rep? That'd be kind of cool too. Okay. Most families just go on the tour and they might grab lunch and then they just leave. So go talk to the different buildings, the people in the different buildings, especially the admissions. It's okay to go see them. All right. So try that out. Then as you're entering your junior year, I highly, 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 highly recommend that teenagers do their SAT or ACT prep in the summer before junior year. That is the easiest time. That is the least occupied time that teenagers have. After that, school year kicks in and junior year tends to be busy, regardless of the difficulty level of your classes. Because from sports, you're going from JV to varsity usually. And again, you've now taken up an extra step in your extracurricular. So you're probably committing yourself a little bit more. You're taking maybe an AP class or two or three, depending on what's available to you and what you're interested in. So you've already leveled up in junior year. And now the question becomes, great, how do we fit in SAT prep and all of that? So my recommendation is do your SAT prep over the summer before junior year. SAT or ACT, it really depends on which math you are in or ended with in 10th grade. SAT goes up until algebra 2, or ACT goes until pre-calculus, okay? And then you're allowed to take the test. These scores are valid for 5 years. So if you want to take a gap year, you can still test in that time frame and it will be okay. So here are all the months I have that the SAT or ACT are offered. Note that even when they're offered in the same month, the dates never overlap. It's always going to be a different Saturday of the month. So that's another thing. And PSATs, yes, they happen depending on the county that you're in, they happen in 8th grade, they happen in 9th grade, they happen in 10th grade, and pretty much all across the country, they happen in 11th grade. Okay. Now, that test is different every year because on average, they'll really consider what levels of reading and math and comprehension, all of that, what level the 8th graders are at versus the 9th graders versus 10th graders. So let's say the 8th graders are not going to see algebra 2 on their PSATs because on average, as a nation, most 8th graders have not taken algebra 2. Does that make sense? So it's basically incrementally getting closer and closer to the real SAT, but it's not the real deal until you get into 11th grade. Now, the 11th grade PSAT, also called the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. Ultimately, if you score in the top 10% of your state, you might qualify for the National Merit Scholarship. Okay, just let's take a quick breather here. And in the chat, can you tell me if you're still with me? Because this is, I think, while the slides they seem simple to me, but they may not be because I've seen them too many times and I created them. But I want to make sure I'm not overwhelming you with a lot of information and that we're all still on the same page and have a handle on this. Okay, we have two people saying, yes, we're here. I'm hoping the others are not lost, but okay. Yes, okay. So this is working. I promise I'm not looking just for validation for myself and to make myself feel better, but I think it just hit me. And I do this a lot where I throw in hardcore content and then the person in front of me, actually this happened last week. I presented at it's a national charity league, but it was the Reading Easton chapter. And there were about 30 moms there. And I thought I was doing a great job breaking down the timelines and just pointing out the common mistakes families make, all of this. And then as we were leaving, a lot of the moms were like, well, no, I'm just so anxious. And a couple of moms said that. If it was one or two, I'd say, okay, maybe I'm so sorry. I was hoping this would be more from stress to strategic, but now I just freaked you out and I'm sorry about that. But a couple of moms said that. And I was like, what did I do? I didn't mean to stress you out. Quite the opposite. I was planning to take your stress and systematically organize it. So yeah, I realized just now that I might've been making the same mistake again. So good to have a pulse check that I don't need to tone it down. We're okay so far. All right. Couple of things again. Junior year continued because isn't it full of fun? So PSATs, if you score in the top 10 percentile of your state, you may qualify for the National Merit Scholarship. It's not guaranteed. It simply means you enter the drawing. After your first scores comes out, you'll then receive, if you are in the drawing, then you'll receive additional application materials you need to complete. They'll ask you about GPAs, extracurricular activities, a couple essays to write, and so on. And once again, if you do end up qualifying, you're not going to find out until January of senior year. Okay, so not in a few months, but it's going to be almost a full year before you find out, hey, did we get the scholarship or did we not? The National Merit Scholarship is $2,500 and it is a one-time payment. It is not something that repeats, not something that you renew every year in any way. You can't reapply for it. It's just a one-time done deal. Okay. Now, with that, another thing to keep in mind with PSATs, because I have families who've come to me and they're like, oh, my team didn't do so well. They got a 900 on the PSAT and they're going to score really low on the SAT. Just something to keep in mind is that the SAT is scored out of 1,600. The PSAT is scored out of 1,520. So you want to add the balance 80 points to your PSAT score to figure out how your team would do on the actual SAT. All right. So just something to note. And it might turn out that what you thought was low is just on point average, just the national average. So your team's not ahead, your team's not behind. And again, we will have to do a separate presentation on SATs and ACTs and PSATs and all of that. Well, but for now, this is the main thing you need to know. And I think if it comes out to it, it's October, I might actually do that presentation next month. So that might be the webinar. No promises on the phone. I might find something that I just absolutely need to share that's bigger than that. But as of right now, I'm thinking it might just be the PSATs and SATs and all of that. Okay, so that's just the testing component now. Now, we've talked about the college searches and tours and live presentations and virtual presentations, which for all of that, just go on the university's website and you can put in college tour, you can put in admissions presentations, and they'll take you to the login page if they offer something of that sort. All right. And I mentioned the demonstrated interest, the ways you can demonstrate interest earlier. So get started on that. Juniors, get started on that and keep it going on. Okay, scholarships. One thing to note for scholarships, you can start applying in junior year. Just scholarships.com is a good database. FastWeb is another good database. College Board Scholarship Search is another database. And you will see the same scholarships overlapping. So it's not just, you're not going to find different scholarships across all platforms. It's simply that private companies, nonprofits, organizations, even families in remembrance of family members who passed away will offer some kind of scholarships. So if that's the case, if let's say I'm offering a scholarship, okay, well, I now need to know how to make the public aware that I'm offering the scholarship. I would probably list it on one or all of the databases for maximum eyeballs. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to the SATs now that we're done with the PSATs thing, and I've covered the other major parts because there is something to know about the SATs, and that is when. So we talked about timing a bit ago. When do you prep? If you can't do it over the summer, you're already into junior year. What are some of the pitfalls families fall into? Well, the first one is thinking that it's a spring exam, SATs or ACTs. Like I said, they're valid for 5 years. Most families don't start prep until this March, April timeframe. But notice in purple, I've written down what else is usually happening in that timeframe. So midterms, depending on the high school you're in, but I think for the most part, they tend to happen in January. And in the chat, please post if your teenager's high school does it in December, because it'd be really cool to learn that people still practice that. But I'm finding more and more high schools tend to do this, at least in this area, in January. But I know if I go into Florida again, then they tend to do it in December. So we did them in December in the beginning and then switched over to January. And then I think we switched back to December or something. Or it's vice versa, something like that. So we played both games. But then here's the thing. If you're in the state of Connecticut or one of the states that partners with College Board to give public school juniors a free SAT exam, well, here's the deal. That exam is executed on in either March or April. Now, this is an in-school test date, which means you don't have to pay for it. You don't have to register for it. Your team just has to show up on that school day and take the test. After the test is over, officially for everybody, they'll probably go to lunch and then go to class. Or now that the test is shorter, they might just go to their next class and then lunch and then continue the day. So, but that doesn't happen until here. But May is AP exams. And a lot of majority of the juniors have usually one AP at minimum. You're busy prepping. In fact, Once you come home, you come back to school from spring break around in April, your teachers are probably adding on to your workload because they need you to be ready for that AP exam. And AP exams are the first 2 weeks of May. The SAT is the first Saturday of May. And guess what your teenager is going to spend time prepping for? The AP exam, because the AP exam happens once a year and they know that they can retake the SAT. Okay, so that's what ends up happening. But then you end up adding to your stress load. You'll see why when I show you what the summer after looks like. But same thing happens in June, which is that you have finals. And even if your school does projects instead of finals, even if you do have official finals, you might also have social events, your proms and sports galas, banquets, and everything happening in this time frame. And then your teachers are also trying to put in all these final grades. So they're trying to add in the essays or tests and quizzes and all of this other stuff to add to all of the finals. So are you really thinking about SATs and ACTs in that time frame? Okay. Are you, and even if you are, and even if you're studying, do you think you're giving yourself your absolute best shot? So one of the things I recommend is that for anyone who's into junior year, and I know we have a few who are into junior year right now, and maybe you didn't start your SAT prep, and that's okay. We are in October right now. The PSATs are happening, or they might, yeah, they're happening. And my recommendation is that start prepping for the real SAT or ACT, whichever exam. Take the practice tests, maybe take the real exam in December, right? So start the prep now, take the first exam in December, make the March or April exams, depending on if you're doing SAT or ACT, make them one of the middle exams that you take, not the first exams that you take. And that way you can round it out at this point. But what happens in the beginning is you're going to be covering a lot of your foundations. You're going to be learning the concepts that you might have forgotten because they were 2 years ago. Maybe you're learning the vocab for the first time, which happens with SAT. It has vocab, and now it's time to study for it. Sit down with the flashcards or however you prep for it, but you're going to need time to memorize those words. So give yourself the time to do all this heavy duty lifting work now. And that way you have a few months in between. And yes, you'll have to keep practicing, but that is still one of the best ways to do it. It's not like if you were a sophomore, you did the prep over the summer and then retake, everything could be done for the holidays. We stretch your process out a little bit. Okay. And that's okay. Just see if you can get your testing done by the end of junior year, if that's possible. If it's not, that's okay. It's okay to go into senior year, but it just may be a little more stressful. That's all. Okay. One more thing for juniors, make sure you ask for recommendations in May. And usually a lot of the high schools will the guidance counselors tell you you should, but even if they don't, talk to the teachers in May after the APs are over, so mid-May, mid to late May, and just ask the teachers, hey, Mr. or Miss So-and-so, would you be willing to write me a recommendation? And then follow up with the email with just a thank you and ask them if there's anything they need you to fill out. Okay. That takes us to the end of the school year and into the summer. Now, if you are a senior or if you're a junior right now, really, you're going into senior year. One of the best things that I was able to do with my students is that we got majority of their application stuff done over the summer. So even if they had SAT prep to do and they took care of that independently, because I no longer do the SAT stuff, but even if they took the class and they did all of that, they did that over the summer, because we all know no one's touching their summer homework until about the week or the 2 weeks before school starts. So use the rest of the time wisely, get your college essay done. August 1st is supplementals. Let's start working on those and get those done. Resume, extracurriculars, everything, pull it all together, because senior year is busy. It doesn't matter if you're not taking AP classes. It doesn't matter if you may not have as many extracurricular activities. What most families underestimate is the emotional side. Okay, there's going to be a lot of stress involved. As a parent, you're going to be flipping out because you're wondering, did they do that? Did they do that? Are they working on it? Are they thinking about the college list? Are they doing? So there's more, the emotions can take over if we're not systematically approaching this. So try to do, let's use some positive words here, right? Let's work on 98% of your writing over the summer. And that way, yes, some of my students have a couple things trickling, but it's not that big of a deal if they need to cancel a session because they have a test or a quiz or an essay to write or some sports thing happening, because we know we're already early. We're not just on track, we're early. Okay. But that happened, that benefit happened because we planned for it. And the other thing is, some universities appreciate you sending things in earlier, and they might even let you know earlier. So yes, the deadline might say December 1st. Some might say, okay, but if you send it in September, we might let you know in October. So there are different ways universities tend to play this, and there is no disadvantage to sending your things in early, even if you're not doing an officially early deadline. And then if you want to update your application because you now have new things you want to say, then you email them and say, hey, I'd like to update you on this. Here's my application ID number, because once you send in your applications, the universities will email you back and say, hey, here's your tracking number, here's your student number, whatever code they're using to keep track of who you are and any correspondence that you have with the university. Okay, so that's happening then. Interviews are happening around this time frame as well. Note that if it's an optional interview, those spots fill up pretty quickly. So, I mean, we've checked in early November and everything's full all the way until December, on January, and then there's nothing available. It's just universities are just finishing out their interviews in January. Okay. Common deadlines for early action, early decision. Early action, October 15th, November 1st, November 15th. Early decision, November 1st, November 15th, or January 1st, January 15th. So, or some universities have two binding cycles. So they have two, I think I have a slide for this. Yes. So early action is not binding. I simply acted early. Early decision is binding. And some universities will have two of these. I'm willing to commit fully, the binding option. Parents, that basically means that if you choose early decision, once your teenager submits their application, you will receive an email with an electronic contract stating that you are now committed to attending that university, or your teen is, barring any kind of major life circumstance that you will prove. So that can be, okay, financially, we cannot afford this because job loss, and here are the documents for the job loss. Maybe it's a medical condition, somebody in the family, immediate family. Maybe it's a family disruption, whether that's a separation, a divorce, whatever is happening in there, or it might be something mental health related, but there's something that's massive and happening. Otherwise, you're committed to attending that university, and you're going to pull your applications from the universities that you already applied to once you are sure you're accepted. Okay, so a couple of strings attached there. I recommend not using the early decision option unless you're confident you can pay for it on your own, simply because you don't know how much money the university is going to offer you, and you're committing yourself before knowing any of that. So that's that. Early decision, early action deadlines will be released usually mid-December to mid-January. And if you apply in the January cycle, then usually around mid-February, if you did the early decision cycle 2. And the regular decisions will be April, May. No matter when you find out, so no matter if you did early decision and you found out in December, you do not have to commit to that university until May 1st. That means, as a parent, you will be paying that $200 to $500 deposit, holding your teenager's spot in that at that university. If you find out afterwards that they're off the wait list at another university, you can always ask for that deposit back at university number 1, and they may return it or they may not. Okay. But you will not find out about the waitlist thing until after May 1st. So just something to know. Financial aid forms are now open. So any seniors we have on the call, you want to submit your FAFSA this month. Okay. And then you can update it in January or February. Just make sure you're getting your tax returns done as soon as possible in the new year and getting all that sorted out and updating your FAFSA. That's the free application for federal student aid. Now, here's the thing. You're not going to find out how much money the government will give you until March. But it also goes to the universities. And if you applied early, universities will see those forms. And based on that, they can give you any kind of needs-based funding. Okay. All right. And then, of course, CSS Profile is a paid application. So that is one that is on College Board. That can be anywhere from $25 to $35 based on how many universities you apply to. Okay. And finally, the scholarships, ongoing grades, extracurriculars, demonstrated interest. This is all an ongoing process. And in terms of SATs, you can test usually up until the month the application is due. If you have deadlines in January, then you can test until December because there is no exam in January. So you can test until December and then you can send in the scores. All right. Any questions on anything so far? We're almost done, guys. Okay. Couple of changes. So this is important. FAFSA no longer factors in the net worth of any small business, which counts as any less than 100 employees. So they don't count that in when they're considering your financial aid. And they also don't factor in another teen or another kid you might have in college and are paying for. So used to be that they would ask just so they have an idea of how much what you're supporting, basically. But now they no longer factor in any older sibling in college. The CSS profile really, CSS profile is the detailed financial aid application. And the new change they have is that in the case of divorce or separated parents, it's divorce or separated parents. Now it factors in the income of the highest monetary contributing parent. So maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing, but that's where they are at the moment. And then, of course, as we talked about earlier, that the SAT, ACT are basically mandated for the top 20% of the universities. All right, any questions so far? Okay, so I want to give you an idea of the new project that is now open for anyone to participate in. I've created sort of a subscription service because college counseling can be anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000. And that can be one, unnecessary, particularly when you're in 9th, 10th grade, and maybe even parts of 11th grade, but you also still want to feel like you have information available to you, just like how we're talking right now. But I bet you have questions. I bet there's things you've heard from other people and you want to know, is this true? Is this rumors? What's happening? And I want to remove the guesswork that comes with that and make it affordable. So if you're interested I have a subscription, you can cancel at any time. And it's $149 per month. We do 2 calls per month. And then we have a teen quarterly call because one of the things that actually one of the parents said is my teen doesn't listen to me. Here we go. Here we are. So in this case, it's having everything. You have the roadmap, just like how we do with the priorities for the month. But this goes into much more detail because now I'll send you the templates, the checklist. I'll send you, here we go. We'll have a teaching and coaching strategy of the biggest things that we need to know about, whether that's extracurriculars, whether that's how to pick classes, whether that's here's the whole behind the scenes of what happens in college admissions. And now we can deep dive into things that I can't always do on our webinars. Because to give you an idea, when I recorded I created this online course. I never actually put it out to the public because then I realized it might be overwhelming. But I realized that, after 6 months of creating it, but recording just the basics information of every category, it was 12 and a half hours. So that whole video course was 12 and a half hours. And that's the basics of everything. And I want to break this down and give it to you in ways you get it, in ways that's not overwhelming. And that includes the college list trackers. Essay brainstorming will work on that, especially with your teens. When we have our teens, we'll have a private parent community. But yes, and it's all at a fraction of the cost. So if you're interested in the College Compass Circle, here are a couple of topics we'll talk about. Playing the right game. So the strategy of what types of universities you want to go into, hidden opportunities, especially over the summer, application timeline, mastery, building your college list. And for the first 10 people, actually, I'm going to try and do this for as many people as possible, but I'll actually look through your college list for you and say, is this a good list? What are we looking for? What should you edit? All of that. Essay foundations. There's just detail on everything. So if you are interested, then let's try this out. Now, yes, my website seems a little shady, but that's because I'm trying to switch over from my original Let's Talk College to Squarespace, but I'm having trouble with it. So this is still legitimate if you're interested. And I am going to post the link to this in the chat if you'd like to take a look. There's no rush, but it's important to know that this is only open this week. After that, I'm not opening this until January. So I want to make sure this is sort of the community that you're looking for as a parent, that you're getting the support. I want to be able to bring in the therapist, the advisors, the financial aid people, basically people who can cover what I can't, because it might not be my expertise. So I want to build this out into something that's meaningful. The calls, Yasmin, I see your question, will be anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half, twice a month. So I'm thinking on Mondays twice a month, and then they will be recorded, but they're only available to, so it's not like the YouTube where these are posted on YouTube. The calls that we do will just be sent to you. Yeah, only open this week because, again, we're working on the tech. I'm working on the tech side. It's just me right now behind the scenes, but and I don't want this open all the time. I want to make sure we're systematic. We're approaching this in a systematic way, because I keep saying systematic to you a lot. It would be a mess if I just left it open all the time. So systematically from now, and then January, and then May or June. I haven't decided that third one. We have to see how it goes in between. And for the first 10 people who sign up, we'll do a three free one-on-one consults if you're still subscribed, which that's a $750 value. So you're getting a lot out of it. And I'm trying to make sure that it is financially feasible for majority of the families. So if you're interested, please check out the link. It's only open this week, and you're the first ones to find out. This week, I will be emailing about it. So bear with me as you get a few more emails than you normally would from me just for this week. And then after that, we'll go back to our regularly scheduled programming, and we'll make it a little fun. I think some of it in these, I just try to cram in all the information, but now we'll try to address your questions, spotlight parents, see what opportunities they found, and how you can find summer programs and stuff for your teens, all of that. Okay. We'll make this fun, because your teen, these are the last few years they're at home. And there's too much friction. There's too much arguing. Even earlier today, I had a mom who's now peeved at her teen because he just keeps canceling sessions with me and everything. So we want it to be less friction, more fun, and make this memorable. And someone actually told me last week, I went to coffee with a youth council in our local area. And they said that, honestly, I didn't realize it until she said it, because I'm not a parent, but your teen at this stage is gauging how approachable you are in a tough situation. They're gauging whether or not to approach you when they're freaked out about something. And most families are at a friction point about this college applications process. We're constantly asking questions of, did you find out this? Did you do this? And that almost feels more constricting to them, that mom's going to badger me. I actually had a student who said that, my mom, I just asked her what was for dinner, and she turns it into a college conversation. So she's like, in college, no one's going to cook for you. So that's what she remembered about the process. But just make sure along the way, we're not sacrificing our relationships with teens, because it's already stressful being, no teens on this call, right? It's already stressful being with teens. I already peeved off a couple yesterday at my temple. I'm going to delete this part from the recording, but I already peeved off a bunch of them. And all I did was say something for 15 minutes. I was taking initiative. That's all. I didn't think it was bossy. I took 15 minutes, and now at least 7 or 8 people are peeved at me. So it's already a tumultuous time period. Let's see if we can remove some of that friction and make it memorable. Let's make it fun. Let's make the college tour something to remember. But that's what we have available. And ultimately, remember that you don't need to know every step of the way. You just need to know the next right one. And we can always figure that out together. Even if you decide not to join the Compass Circle, we're still going to continue with our once-a-month webinars. So if you feel that's enough for you, then no worries. It's completely up to you. And if you do want to take it a step further, then that option is also available for you. All right. Any questions on anything? And actually, I want to stop the recording so that you can unmute yourselves